Welcome to the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District Brown Bag Lunch with a Conservationist. This is the irrigation class. So we're going to be talking about irrigation, how to do it the best you can with what you got. We'll look at some current irrigation practices that you may have, and then some best management practices you can start to consider right now. And we'll also field questions after I do a quick little intro here. While I'm doing an intro, you can also type your questions in the box as we're going along. Feel free to type any other questions in the box there. That's helpful for making sure we answer everyone's questions and have it kind of documented in there. So just to begin here, I'm Paul DiMaggio. I work for the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm an agricultural engineer by trade, and I'm a certified irrigation designer and a certified ag irrigation specialist with the Irrigation Association. I've been working at the Soil and Water Conservation District for about 8 years now, and I've been a professional engineer for about 4 years. So I've seen a lot in Jackson County about irrigation. I've been to all corners of the county and looked at all different types of irrigation happening here in this county. I talk regularly with the irrigation districts and irrigators of all types. So hopefully we can answer some of your questions here today. So that being said, we'll first discuss about, actually before I dive in, let's introduce the other SWCD staff who are here with me. Megan, can you introduce yourself? Megan's in the middle of eating something. How about Clint?
I'll go.
All right, Jenna. All right.
Hi, I'm Jenna Sanford. I'm the Stewardship Monitoring Coordinator with Jackson Soil and Water.
Sorry about that. It is lunch with a conservationist, so I was munching something. I'm Megan Montgomery, and I'm the Agriculture Resource Conservationist with Jackson Soil and Water.
And I'm Clint Nichols. I'm the Forest and Riparian Resource Conservationist with the district.
Great, thank you. And like I said, we have still got Laura and Paul and the folks that Paul is with. So thanks a lot for joining. So our mission here at the district is mainly to improve, with regards to irrigation, to improve ag water quality, which is agricultural water quality, to prevent excess irrigation water from running off of the field into the nearby stream or lake. And also, if that happens, if the irrigation water can carry nutrients, high temperatures into those water bodies and cause issues for aquatic habitat. That's the main thing we look at for irrigation. And another aspect of irrigation is when you have efficient irrigation and there's not a lot of water leaving your field, that means you're utilizing every drop of water for crop production, for the use that irrigation water is meant to be used for. I'll touch real quick on what was on the postcard here. Irrigation in Jackson County, you don't have to, you only have to use it once every 5 years to maintain your water right. So it's not a strict use it or lose it policy. If you don't use it for 4 years, that's fine. Your water right is still completely valid. And if you just want to keep your water right valid to maintain your property value, then you can just use it once every 5 years for your irrigation place of use. So in those remaining years, if you don't feel like using the irrigation water, you can just leave it in the stream, let it go by. Let your neighbor use it. You know, it can be more efficient use and effective use of that water rather than just dumping it on your property and not being able or willing to manage it at that time. So I'll just touch on that. That's a new one a lot of folks don't consider, especially when they're new landowners moving up here in the area. And there's all kinds of things going on, all types of things to consider. Maybe you don't even have to irrigate that first year. Just let it be, leave it in the irrigation district canal, and you'll be fine. So best management practices to start to consider right now is just maintenance of your existing system. So with flood irrigation, that can be maintaining your ditches, keeping them clean and clear so you can see where the water's moving. If you can't see where the water's going, it's really difficult to manage it. With pipelines and sprinklers, just noticing any broken sprinklers or pipes and just making those fixes as you see them. And that's a simple way to just really bump up your efficiency of your irrigation without doing a whole lot. You don't need to do a whole redesign. It's simple maintenance up to your level of management that you want. And ultimately, we're looking to work towards an even distribution of that water on your field so that you can get the most bang for your buck for the irrigation that you're applying. If you've got too much water in one area, you're going to cause rushes and weeds and kind of a wetland area to form. If you have too little water in another area, that can lead to other weed species growing and outcompeting your grasses, such as Medusa head or star thistle and other weeds. So if you have an even distribution of your water, that tends to help with reducing weeds and increasing the crop yields of the crop you're trying to grow. In Jackson County, a large acreage of the county is pasture. And I'll read off some of these facts I've got here from our handbook, from our irrigation page. 6% of the land in Jackson County is irrigated. That's about 107,000 acres. This irrigated land contributed to $53 million in crop sales in 2017. Over 2/3 of that irrigated land is used to produce forage like hay and pasture. So the majority of the irrigated land is hay and pasture in Jackson County. The remainder split between pears, alfalfa, grapes, and recently a lot of hemp. Irrigation type or irrigation efficiency as well can be split between pressurized and flood irrigation in Jackson County, with just the majority of the land irrigated with pressurized system and drip irrigation, but still a large chunk of it irrigated with flood irrigation. In 2015, they calculated about 40% of the land irrigated was flood irrigation still. And on a worldly scale, the vast majority of irrigation is flood irrigation. So that's still happening a lot of places, and it can be very effective. In Jackson County, 95% of irrigation water is supplied from surface water sources, such as streams, rivers, springs, and that water is captured and redistributed by large reservoirs and or small ponds. This can be different than other areas in Oregon, like the Willamette Valley, where it's a large groundwater area, or in the Central Valley of California, where there's a mixture of groundwater and surface water. Here in Jackson County, there's very few, if any, groundwater wells that I know of, that I've seen. So it's very few and far between. Most irrigation is surface irrigation. So that was, I think, the end of my quick intro here on irrigation. So if anyone has any questions, specific questions before I fill in more time with more cool irrigation facts, let me know. Laura, it looked like you had some questions there, but if not, I can just continue doing a presentation. So let me know.
Yeah, Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Paul?
I can hear you. Laura, it looks like you're still muted, but yeah, Paul, it looks like you'd be here.
I have a couple questions. We have a vineyard in Talent, and a couple things you said that when I worked with the water master a few years ago in terms of water requirements, because we've got old water rights on the creek here, Coleman Creek, And when I talked with them before, the requirement, at least what they identified to me, the requirement is we had to use the water every year, number one. Or if we went through some period of time of not using it, that we lose those rights. And so what you said is that you don't have to use, I think you said you only have to use it once every 5 years. And is that something new, or is that something that is in writing someplace?
Yeah, so that's pulled, everything I talk about water rights is pulled directly from their water right booklet that they have on their Oregon Water Resource Department website. I can try to find it and put that down here in the box. But yeah, that's what it says, is that to keep the water right valid, you have to use the irrigation water on your entire irrigated area once every 5 years. You don't have to use all of your allotted water right. It's really based on acreage. So if you've got 10 acres of water right for your vineyard, then once every 5 years, you need to just document with a picture that you've used that water to irrigate all 10 acres.
Yeah, that would.
And I'm confused about why they would have said you have to use it every single year. Do you remember which water master you talked with? Was it Siobhan or was it Travis?
It wasn't a lady, so it must have been Travis. I don't remember the name. In fact, I talked with him just recently on another matter that actually Clint has been involved with this on, in terms of using water out of the creek to do some work along the creek. But because of what and the second thing that they've done, though, is they provided us a letter, maybe 6-7 years ago, that we had, that said, and we had a choice to make whether we wanted to use Talon Irrigation District as our primary source of water for the vineyard, or we wanted creek. And we chose to use the Talon Irrigation District as the primary, and then that left the creek to be our secondary. We've never been approached by it, but I didn't want to get them coming down one day. We do go out basically once a year. We've got a spot set up where we go down and like this last year, we don't get our water before our first spray. So we go down there and take water out of the creek for first spray. But we've never put water on the whole acreage. I mean, that would be, there's about 17 acres up there, and that would waste water, actually. So, but okay, that answers that, and I can.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a while since you, it might be good to touch base with the new water master. Just give them a call and say, hey, I'd like to just touch base on my water rights. And you can ask him those questions too, just to get acquainted with the new water master. His name is Siobhan Hayes. I think he's been the water master for the last 3 or 4 years. But yeah, prior to that, it was Travis Kelly. And I think it's for supplementary rights as well. So if you have a supplementary right, you may not have to use it once every 5 years to maintain it. That's a good question for the water master on how often you need to use your supplementary rights from Coleman Creek to maintain those rights. With TID, your right is pretty much well locked in because you have a record that you paid for those many acres of water rights each year. So if anything, go ahead.
That end of it. The second thing that you mentioned that I have a question on is, I'm sure you're familiar with LIVE, low impact ideology, and LIVE, LIVE.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of low impact development, but
okay. Well, I'm sorry. It's it's an organization in the Pacific Northwest that basically does third-party certification for vineyards that are low impact viticulture and ideology.
Okay,
And
great.
it's all sorts of requirements, but one of the requirements they have is that vineyardists must every 5 years take samples of their water, and that's that's a potentially a $300-400 hit expense.
Mhm.
When it comes to TID, and I've talked with Felton over there,
Yep.
they don't do testing. And so does your department do any testing of the quality of the water there?
No, we haven't done it before. We've helped folks, we've referred folks to where they can get testing done for water quality. But I've heard that question before come up, where if you're an organic agriculture producer and you're using this water from town irrigation district, and there may or may not be non-organic pesticides or herbicides in that water source, are you still considered to be an organic producer? And from talking a little bit about it, it seems like the answer is yes. It's okay if you still use that water because, you're trying the best you can to be organic. It's a self-certification process. You're using the water that's available to you. Town irrigation district isn't going to go out of their way to like clean up the water. They can't become like an organic irrigation district. They don't have the capacity to do that. So
I would imagine, and the reason why I asked that is because there are several vineyards in the area, in the valley, Low Valley, Bear Creek Valley. There's several vineyards that are certified live. And by the way, it's not organic. It's a sustainability.
yeah, I was just using that organic as an example that I've heard that water quality testing come up. But yeah, to answer your question more directly, yeah, JSWCD hasn't yet paid or done it for someone. We could certainly assist with how to take it, but ultimately it'd be up to you, the producer, to take that water sample. Yeah.
Let me tell you what the issue is. There are multiple vineyards in the valley that need to do that. And this is really not an issue with you guys, I guess. So say there's 12 vineyards that have to do that, and they're all doing the same thing. They're all testing. It's not a problem to take the test over and get it done, but it's like $300, $350, and so we've got 10, 15 people doing the same test, and getting presumably the same result, but not able to do anything about it. So I understand your role in it now, and I just thought, well, maybe there's someone like Soil and Conservation that do some of that.
Yeah, I don't know if Jenna, Megan, or Clint want to chime in on that, but yeah, I'm going to look up that LIDE organization there. Do you guys do anything else in terms of irrigation efficiency or irrigation audits to keep that certification?
It has a whole lot of requirements. There's a whole section on irrigation, how we irrigate, what we're doing to prevent any runoff. It's a wide range of items that we use. Everything from, well, most of the vineyards are drip irrigation, and so it's pretty efficient.
Right. Great. Yeah, thanks for that info. Oh, LIVE. Thanks, Clint. I thought it was, gotcha. That makes more sense. Okay. Laura, do you have a question?
I'm probably like the smallest land person here. I just have 2 acres in Ashland that I bought in February. I'm right on Paradise Creek.
Great.
And it's an amazing property. I've got boulders the size of SUVs all along the creek, and oak winds, and the conifers are awesome. And I have beautiful pictures of a old black bear walking through a couple days ago, right by my master bedroom.
Cool.
It was a little exciting. You know, and right now, the people that used to live here, they died here from old age. And they had spent their entire lives here. And one of them used to work for the city of Ashland, Al Alsing, if anybody knows him, knew of him. And so I've got this 1952 property with old irrigation pipes that we've got great pressure. And even though we go uphill, I don't have to have a pump. So I'm learning all about how that works. And my big challenge now is, of course, filtration. You know, and before, right now, all of the irrigation equipment got sold off in an estate sale before I bought the property. So I've been replacing it and doing it the way they had it, which is every output has a timer and a filter, you know, and
Sure.
we're having to clean our filters every single day at this point in the irrigation season. So I'm looking to put in a filter at our source, and I don't know anything about doing that, and I'm a little scared to upset these old pipes and possibly cause leakage. So that's my first question. Second question is, along the creek, I have a lot of invasive plants. I have ivy and blackberries, and I wanted to know what riparian rules I'm subject to if I go and disturb these, because I would like to plant with more natives. So I have that question. I got into trouble with that a couple years ago at my old property and spoke with Clint about it. I think that was 4 or 5 years ago. I am not currently irrigating the main pasture, so I was glad to hear about how every 5 years I should document that I'm irrigating everything. But unfortunately, I realized about a month ago that we have star thistle everywhere in the main pasture. So I want to talk about mitigation of that because of our slope. I really prefer to be all organic. And I mean, I can do what Maxine Cass did and blow out my rotator cuffs pulling it out. But if that's the best choice, you know, maybe I can do it with less harm. Ultimately, and the star thistle creates a problem for me, I have been talking with I can't remember the name of the woman at JSWCD Seeds. I wanted to remove all of the, I'll call it pasture grass and star thistle, and put in a wildflower meadow that was solely natives. And, you know, then there's a whole question of using the irrigation on that or not. So it sounds like I should design it to use the irrigation so that I maintain my irrigation rights properly. But I was wondering if we could sort of address that, as well as to, you know, am I jeopardizing irrigation by just going for pollinators? And if I put in hives, would that count as a harvest?
A lot of things to consider. Yeah, I'll just touch on that first question about the filtration, and then Clint's here. He can talk about the creek riparian, and then we'll talk about pasture management. I don't know if Megan might have something to add about the pasture, doing like a wildflower meadow, and we'll talk about water rights on there. Those are all great questions. So the filtration, cleaning out your filters once a year or once a week, you said, is great. That means your filters are working well, right? It means you're able to clean them out. Once a day?
I'm having to clean the filters day
Yeah, so
right
that's
now. So
that's too much.
yeah, yeah.
That is not acceptable for normal operation. So is there a filter? There's a bunch of little small filters everywhere. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's all small filters. There's nothing at the source. And so I need to, do I go to my ditch writer to work with them on that, or?
Possibly, yeah. You get water from TID?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then
Paradise.
what type of sprinklers are you using?
Just right now, just regular sprinklers, the
impact.
oscillating kind and
Okay.
the shooty kind that, yeah,
Okay.
the shooty, very technical.
Yeah, the shooty kind. Yeah, those ones don't need, a ton of filtration. So it could be sometimes on these filtrations that are installed previously, you could be filtering for a drip system.
Yeah.
When actually you're using a larger sprinkler where you don't need to filter it as much.
Ultimately, I want to take my orchard to more drip and be more effective. But for now, we got in the 1st of May and it was not the time to make big improvements.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, so you definitely do want to keep that high level of filtration for your drip on your orchard. Having filtration for drip right at the source wouldn't be ideal because there's not a lot of pressure right at the canal to push water through the filter. So you want that big filter for your drip system to be right before your field and right before your drip. So you'd have I'm assuming you got a pipeline coming down from TID and then it splits out, right? So you would have to cut that pipeline in there and put in a new larger filter. And there's some irrigation contractors in the area that can provide you with some options on where to get a filter, or you can buy one off the shelf from a lot of irrigation online retailers. The options really boil down to how much you want to be out there to clean it. So if you're not able to be out there a lot, you want an automatic filter that automatically cleans itself, but those are more expensive. Or you can have a filter that's kind of the next level down that has a little indicator on the filter body that pops up when the filter gets clogged, that maybe you could see somewhere on your property. It's just a little red deal that pops up and it says, okay, there's a lot of pressure drop across the filter, which means the filter's clogged. You need to come here and manually open the valve, flush out the dirty water, wait till it's clean, and then close the valve again. Those are great. Alternatively, there's ones without a timer or a turkey timer on there. Usually they just have a pressure gauge on either side of the filter. So you go up and you compare the pressure gauges and you see, okay, I'm losing a lot of pressure across the filter, which means it's likely dirty. You can use a screen filter for drip or a more expensive sand media filter. That's what it's called. I've heard, good reviews from each from drip irrigators, and it depends on your just level of production, I think. So on larger acreage where you're doing potentially vineyards or a lot of organic vegetables, and you need something that can automatically backflush, which a lot of these bigger sand media filters can do, which is a big body. It's like a pool filter. I don't know if you've seen those. It's like a big body and it's all filled with sand. And it's good for catching organic matter as the water comes in. It traps all the leaves and the moss and stuff that's in the TID canal.
We've even found shrimp.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch of crawdads and stuff in the canal and frogs and whatever. So yeah, those sand media filters then can be backflushed as well automatically or by turning a valve. But the screens seem to work well for a small acreage like you is probably what I would recommend, is more of a screen filter that's rated for drip irrigation. And it's a kind of a canister with a screen that sits inside, and the water flows through the inside, and all the gunk gets caught on the inside of the screen, and then the clean water flows out and into your system. And when it gets dirty, you just brush the inside of the screen, or it manually flushes water through the inside and out the bottom. And those seem to be pretty effective. And on the size of the filter there, I would say, you know, you can do your own independent research or call a contractor, see what they recommend. That's widely available. But a larger filter will be less times you have to clean it. So if you can.
Do you guys make a list of irrigation contractors?
We do. We have just a general list, like a Google search list of contractors. We can send that to you. If
Oh, that'd
Clint
be
has
awesome.
your email address, we can.
I'll type it in right now.
Okay. Yeah, we'll send that to you. And let's see if Paul is still. It looks like Paul left. I was going to ask him what filter he used for his vineyard, but yeah, those can style filters, they can run you, you know, a larger one could be up to $1,000, but it could be a couple $100 for a larger filter. And there's no reason to remove your other small filters
Right.
downstream of the new big filter, right?
Mhm.
And cutting into the pipe and cutting into that old pipe and putting in a new filter does run you some kind of risk of like damaging that existing main line.
Right.
But it's pretty low risk. As long as you, I mean, you said you had 2 acres of irrigation, or
Yeah.
how big is the
2 acres.
pipeline coming down from TID?
Honestly, I don't know that answer.
Okay. TID might know, but you'll definitely know when you dig it up.
Yeah.
And putting a filter in line of that mainline system would be adding a valve and adding
Mhm.
an air vent upstream of that valve to release that air before the water comes down.
Okay.
And all of the problem could be blowing up an old system, would be, well, I say blowing up, but really cracking it and having some water shoot out. Would be if you're putting that new filter and you're opening and closing a valve really quick, and all that water coming down from TID is hitting that valve, and it shakes that whole pipeline, and it could cause a crack somewhere. That's what you got to watch out for. And that's really, if you put a slow closing valve upstream of your filter that you're likely probably going to keep open most of the time, unless you want to do some maintenance on the entire filter body, then you could valve it there, remove the filter. But really, you're going to keep that valve open most of the time, and probably open and close your valves at your orchard or at your sprinklers. But yeah, I would say that'd be a pretty low concern. Some of this PVC that was put in, you know, a long time ago, seems to last pretty long. And what tends to fail mostly are old elbows or old joints, old T's and old elbows. So sometimes those break, and that happens. Just heard of a couple breaking on some other high pressure TID pipelines recently where they have 100 PSI, which causes more stress and strain on their elbows. I don't know. Do you know how much pressure you have at your system?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Not yet. I've got a whole list of questions to find out, but yeah.
Yeah. So basically a higher pressure, higher elevation drop between the canal is going to be more just wear and tear on the pipelines. And that's expected. It's, you know, everyone's got to dig up PVC pipeline every once in a while and replace joints and elbows. That's kind of name of the game with irrigation sometimes. So wouldn't worry too much about that. Did that answer your question mostly about filtration?
Yeah.
And if you got other questions too, we'll email you, and I'll CC my email on there, and you can email me a question.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Now I'll turn it over to Clint for question number 2 that you had about the invasives along the creek. Clint, if you're still there.
Yep. Yeah, just trying to start my camera again.
Cool. Thanks.
So quick question, how far up Paradise Creek?
I am on Walker Avenue in Ashland. I'm up above Siskiyou, just below Peachy. So at 6 blocks up Siskiyou.
Okay.
So on the south side of Siskiyou, sort of in the market of choice area, but up the hill.
Okay. Yeah, I asked because we just did a project with a landowner who's essentially like effectively at the headwaters of Paradise Creek. It's right up below where the TID canal crosses. In fact, their land steward's the Jessups. So you might even know them. So
yeah, the familiar last name. Yeah, I did land steward and master gardener program, so I know all the cool people in town. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all the cool kids that hang out behind the bleachers. In Ashland, it's basically sort of the same thing as outside in the county for vegetation management along riparian areas. So any vegetation removal within 50 feet of the creek it's required that you have a permit from the county or
planting
well,
plan.
so you're in the city, right?
I am in the city, yeah.
So that's a great question. Let me just make sure.
Yeah, I thought I'd find out before I trimmed back to blackberries this time.
Yeah, that is always a good idea. Actually, I'll just go through. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this is what the city code says. Removal of non-invasive or non-native, noxious, and invasive vegetation and replacement with local native plant species is permitted. So it's not the same as like if you're within the county.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And because you're in the city, the county regulations don't apply within city limits. So
okay.
Let me read the rest of this. Sorry, I'm working on my computer remotely at the office, and
that's okay.
Yeah, the act of removing non-native, noxious, and invasive vegetation shall not result in the removal of native vegetation. Local native plant species for both wetland and stream bank applications are identified in city's local native plant species list, and noxious and invasive vegetation approved for removal is identified in the city's prohibited plant list. And let me see if this link still works. This is a link to the City of Ashland Municipal Code, and that probably has that list of plants. But it's going to be all the typical, all the typical ones that you're going to find in that riparian area. So blackberry, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean blackberry, ivy, star thistle. Those are the 3 big ones that I've identified as things I want to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ivy is particularly problematic just in how you go about removing it. The rest of that ordinance says non-native, noxious, invasive vegetation removal and replacement with local native plant species exempt from regulation will not require any permitting.
Okay.
So that is as of the last time we updated this was, I think it was earlier this year I looked at it, so it should be still fairly current. But that link that I put in the chat box should have a little bit more.
Okay.
You can kind of peruse that and just make sure that nothing has changed since then. So of course, the projects that we work on, we always recommend that people, replant any invasive vegetation with native vegetation. We have a couple of programs that can incentivize landowners to do that kind of work. So we have a riparian restoration rebate program. You can find information for that on our website. And that is for small riparian restoration projects. So that's probably something that might be kind of, perfect for a property of your size. You can find information about that. If that's something you want to explore, you can always give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can schedule a time for me to come out and take a look at the site and see, if your site qualifies, that kind of thing.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the most effective way at sort of attacking that kind of a project is that kind of incentive program. So, and it's fairly straightforward. It's not as complicated as some grant programs that you get into. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So what we do is we typically on projects like that, we'll work with the landowner, try and figure out the width of that buffer. So typically what I will say is any place where we're going to remove vegetation, we're going to try and replant it.
Right.
If that land is sort of taking away from pasture areas and you're hoping to have livestock kind of get in there, then at the very least we'd want to see it like reseeded with grasses or something like that. There are sometimes places where, the invasives that we're removing, maybe that's not all of the sort of that ideal riparian area, then maybe we want to try and suggest we plant wider than the number of the plants, the area of plants that we remove. But it really kind of is based on, kind of your goals for your property. What do you need to use that land for? What are your objectives? And the biggest part probably is what is your ability to maintain the site once you've done the work? Because it is, right. It is something that takes some level of effort to stay on top of. So, but yeah, I think that maybe that answers the question. I think it was mostly about permitting, but yeah. In fact, yeah. While I'm talking about it, let me find that link to the rebate program, and I'll put that in the chat too for you.
Yeah, my goal with the property it's so ridiculous. I've never fallen in love with a piece of property like this before. But I can walk to the grocery store. I just had foot surgery 2 weeks ago, so I can't walk currently. But I can walk to the grocery store. I can sit in my master bedroom and watch a 9-year-old or so bear walk by. And then it's just, it's amazing.
Awesome.
I feel like I'm still in the country, but I'm right in the middle of the city, and it's just such a unique property. I want to, we've got 3 or 4 bridges over the creek because we have both sides of the creek. Mm-hmm. And then by putting in a native wildflower meadow, I really want to come up with the ideal city country property and let Rachel do tours of it every year with the land stewards.
There you go. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's just exquisite. It's really amazing. So I can't wait to show it off.
So I just put that link to that rebate program in the chat box, so you can kind of take a look at that. And like I said, read over that, kind of see, if that's something that you want to tackle now, and if that is, then I can also put my contact information if you don't have it. And we can schedule time to come out. Just take a look at the property. And what was your third question? You had something else about, it was like seeding, right?
Could you remind me what your pasture question was? I got distracted listening to Paul's explanation about filters.
No problem. My third question is, I unfortunately have star thistle.
Okay.
And it's on a sloping pasture where any runoff would go back into Paradise Creek. Mm-hmm. So besides the fact that I really don't want to use herbicides on it, I'm looking for and with my goal being a native wildflower meadow,
Right.
I need recommended ways to get rid of this star thistle.
So some of the things that you can try, if you're really unwilling to, and I understand reluctance to use herbicide, regardless of how close you are to a creek or not, it is a good thing for, it's like the only strategy for some invasive species. For others, you have a little bit more in the toolbox. And since you only have, you said you only have 2 acres, right?
Just 2.
It is a fair amount of maintenance to do it, but you can hand pull it.
Right.
That's one strategy, and probably the one that I would recommend the most. Mowing is really not a good idea. What that will do is
every month for the last 20 years.
yeah, what that will do is kind of condition the plant. It essentially learns, not exactly the correct term, but the spot that it grows from, the meristem is what that's called. When that gets disturbed, then the plant will then grow shorter. So that point of growth becomes closer to the ground, and it'll flower closer at ground level where the mower won't cut it. And then also, if it does grow taller, when you're mowing it, especially if it has gone to flower or to seed, then you're just spreading the seed even better than the plant could do itself. So hand pulling it, I would recommend. I don't know what's the condition of the rest of the pasture or the lawn? Is it, I don't know, are you pretty familiar with grass species or?
Not, grasses are new to me.
Okay. But it's, you have decent irrigation.
Yeah.
The whole thing? Okay.
So right now the pasture is not irrigated, it's dried. So mowing it would really, or pulling it would really be a challenge. I was thinking rainy season pulling.
Yeah. So what you can do,
what type of irrigation is on that pasture? Is it flood irrigation or sprinkler irrigation?
Sprinkler.
Okay.
What, yeah. Do you mind telling us your address?
Oh, no problem.
Your property and look at the area.
Whoops. I got it. Okay, my stepson's getting the doorbell. And that's my border collie in the background. I'm going to type my address in since there's chaos at my house.
You can do it in a private message if you want. I mean, there's no one else on this call, but.
Nah, it's just me now. I'm fine.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, 970 Walker, so you can look at it.
Yeah. There's only so many 2-acre properties on that road, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're able to get reliable irrigation and on a good schedule for watering next season, that will help you out for pulling and managing the star thistle long term. So I can send you a kind of like a species list that would include, like, you don't want to put livestock on the property at all, right?
No plans for livestock.
So, kind of a mixture of different, say again?
I was thinking about renting goats, if that would be useful or not.
I mean, it depends on how much of that you want to deal with. Goats, I guess some people have used goats to graze the star thistle, but I think that if there's anything else moderately desirable in your pasture, they're gonna go for that first. They're less picky than any other livestock in terms of their tolerance to graze on thorny things, but I think that's usually in instances where there isn't anything else. So some people use goats for brushing blackberry, but that really is only effective in instances where you can exclude them from anything that's more palatable. So if your conventional pasture and the fact that you have good irrigation and the ability to manage that, I don't think that that's the best route for you. But yeah, manually pulling, so hand pulling, unfortunately. And then in the fall, probably seeding a mixture of native bunch grasses, wildflowers, but really grasses. And what that will do, especially since you can water it, will introduce some good competition. So what star thistle tends to do is colonize areas that, or starts to grow in areas that have been disturbed or kind of neglected,
Mm-hmm.
and the usual management for those perennial grass species has fallen by the wayside, and
Right.
they can't compete with this other weed. So both of those in concert for over the course of a few seasons, you'll start to see that problem diminish.
Yeah, they used to have livestock here. There's an old barn that you can see on the topo, and one of the projects we're doing right now is removing so much old barbed wire. It's unbelievable as to how much wire I'm removing, but it's everywhere, and finding it grown into trees and all over the place. So I know they used to have animals here. Is there a list of the native grasses that you were talking about?
Yeah, I can send you a list of species, and I mean, trying to figure out how to ask this. Are you're wanting to keep irrigating that pasture and continue managing it that way, or
Well,
how do you think
I
area?
want to maintain my water rights with TID. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not. There's like it just kind of impacts what species you pick.
Exactly.
Ones that are more adapted to upland, non-irrigated dryland situations, or ones that will succeed only with irrigation, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were talking. I was talking about that with a lady from Siskiyou Seeds. I wish I could remember her name, who did a whole planting plan, and it was very different on did I want to leave it dry or irrigate it. And we thought it might be more palatable within the city to not freak people out with things that would dry up during the summer and look hazardous.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is a different consideration where you're at than if you were really in a more rural setting, for sure. And I think, I mean, if you're working with that, if you still have that woman's contact info at Siskiyou Seeds, she probably has almost a better idea than I do about some of the site specific considerations for your property. I don't know if she's been out to your property or not. I can give you recommendations for sure for both grasses and establishing better pollinator habitat. That's something that I'm pretty keen on doing with more landowners. But she might have another lens of insight and give you just even more detail about some things that you should think about on your property.
Great. Yeah, I would love information from you as well. My email, I think, is earlier up in the chat box.
Yep, I've got that written down. And then same thing as what Clint said, if you would like us to come out and take a look at, we can come out together and look at both the pasture and the creek and see so just other things that we can't see from talking to you or looking at a
yeah. And well, and you may see other invasives that I haven't recognized yet.
Right. And also the grasses that you have that are valuable. So it could be that you don't need to seed as much as you think, and that by getting regular irrigation on there, there's enough of a seed bank and kind of residual growth of good perennial species that you'll see those really flush up more.
Right. Thank you. This is awesome. I think I'm the only person here. So you guys can all go back to actual work.
No, this is our normal work. We have, if you want to come in and talk to us some more, you're welcome to come in and we can print out maps and stuff for you. This lunchtime meeting was kind of a test this year to see what folks we would, get involved. So thank you for being part of the test group.
Yeah, I would love to set up a meeting out at the property with Clint and whoever else wants to come along. And probably shoot Clint an email and get it scheduled with him would be great. That I think is the end of I'll be walking again by the end of September, so that would be awesome. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, looks like it's about 1 o'clock. So Got all the information here in the chat box, Laura. Got that all
Yeah.
down. Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like Megan put her email in there too.
Yeah,
I've got your email. I'll send you that irrigation information and an example of that filter I was talking about.
That would be fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, then I guess just get together with Clint or Megan or myself about organizing a site visit.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
Okay.
Hey, you guys, this is awesome. I think it's only an organization like yours that would actually give me the opportunity to get this much info from all the educated professionals. So thank you for your time.
Sure. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for your questions. And have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.